So this course is inspired by this painting I did right here. This is watercolor with a bit of colored pencil on top, and I wanted to show you how I got all this softness. So I know it's probably hard to see this drawing, but I will have this uploaded to our group. And so the supplies for this, you just need a water. I have two brushes. One brush is size 8 and a size 14. So that's how those look. And then I have, this is a ceramic palette. And then I have my Gonzai Tombi watercolor. So we're only gonna use black. So as long as you have black, or you can have just one color, you'll be fine. So another thing I want to talk about is a heat tool. If you are impatient like me and you want to speed up the process, this is a must. Other than that, you will be waiting for layers to dry, and it will probably drive you crazy. So like we already talked about, you should already have your drawing ready. All I need to do is get a reference photo so I can kind of think about what shadows I need. So if I look at this one, I noticed that there are some darker areas underneath where her hair is, some shadows underneath her nose and eyes, her eyebrows. Obviously her hair is going to be darker, but I kept it kind of light, and this is up to you as to how dark you want to go. So let's start on the darker areas. I'm taking my smaller brush. I'm going to dip it into my black paint, and I'm just going to add it to one of the wells inside of my palette. As you can see, I'm just reusing what I already have. So this is going to reactivate, but I have a scrap piece of watercolor paper, and that's going to show me how dark I want it. I don't want it that dark. So that's why I have a second well, and I add water to that. And that's going to reactivate some of that paint. And you see you have a lighter wash of paint right there. And that's more the color, that's more the shade that I want. So I'm going to just start with the darker areas I know, which are her eyebrows. I know those are going to be dark. And I have my paper towel here, and I'm just going to pull that color over. It doesn't have to be perfect though. You don't have to make it perfect inside of her eyebrows. You can go outside the line, it's okay. And then I'm going to go here underneath her nose. We are just going to run some paint along underneath her nose. And if you feel like you've put too much down, you can blot your brush off on your paper towel and run that along the edge to just soften it up. You can also take your brush into some water and really take up some of that paint. The only thing you want to do is, like, if you put your brush into water, make sure you take some of it out on the paper towel before you go right back into your painting, because you don't want to push away the paint that you've just put down. For some reason, I tend to overdo this area of the painting. I really like to put in shadows around the nose, but if you look at a lot of photos, depending on the lighting in the photo, there's not a lot of contrast in this area. So I try to keep a light touch just for my own habits, but you can kind of see what you like in your own paintings and kind of go from there. Next, we can paint along the jawline and also put some paint into the lips. Now, the top lip is going to be darker than the bottom lip, So I like to go over that with a few layers. This part is completely optional. You can paint the underside of the hair first, or you can paint the top of the hair. Here, I don't know why, I was just anxious to paint that darker under area first. So just like everything else, we are going to put in a really nice light shadow underneath her chin. So now this first layer is done. You've put down the groundwork to go ahead and put in that really soft first layer, and you can grab your heat tool. I think you use the blow dryer as well to go ahead and dry off your painting. Just make sure you don't put the heat tool too close to your paper. As I'm editing this video, I do remember that I did the hair wet into wet when I first did that first portrait I showed you earlier in the video. But here I'm not doing it wet into wet. And this is completely up to you. If you want to go ahead and wet the area around her head where her hair is going to be, you can go ahead and do that. And that's how you get that soft layer. Here you can still kind of get it, but it doesn't have the same effect, to be completely honest. When you start with wet paper, the water kind of spreads so smoothly as opposed to trying to create it on dry paper. And so that's one of the advantages to painting wet onto wet. If you don't want to do wet into wet, that is completely fine. What you can do is go ahead and add some paint next to her hairline and then use your brush to kind of move that paint away so that it gradually fades out. When you put the hair in, I am taking the tip of my brush to kind of swirl just a little bit here and there. I can do that more when we get the darker colors, but I'm going to go ahead and start with that second layer on each of the parts that we started on the first layer. The only difference is that I'm adding less of the paint. So the darker you go, the less paint you're going to actually need. So you don't want to cover all of your light shadows. You want to keep those visible. I just want to accent some of those darker areas. And as you can see, by adding that darker shade, you automatically see the depth in the eyes. So we're going to go ahead and let this layer dry, the second layer dry, and start on our third layer. So when you look at this one, you have darker here, and then it gets lighter down here. And then in here, it's able to be dark, and so you see the contrast. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get darker in here, and then we'll get darker at the top. So let's try that out. Let's see if we can work it. I'm gonna put a little bit more black in here because I need to get pretty dark. I'm gonna test out this black and see how dark it is. See, that's pretty dark. It's gonna dry later, so you do have to be aware of that. I'm gonna just go in here. So as I was working towards the bottom of the hair, I noticed that it didn't really have that gradation like I was able to get in the first painting. So what I was trying to do is correct that harsh line between it being so dark at the top and being so light at the bottom. Just remember, as you're working through your painting and you're using those darker layers, you can use the colors sparingly. You don't really have to use a ton of your darker colors. My hair at the very top dried kind of weird because my paper was warped. So I went ahead and added more black to my palette, and I'm putting that in here. Looking back over this one, I probably should have used a larger sheet of paper, or I could have drawn her face a little bit smaller so I could have fit more of her hair in. It really made that fade out to white.
I once felt I'm done with the defense. Drove back and climbed over your fence. Had to show you that I was a mess. So you were shrugging your shoulders. I'm closed off, that's what I told you. Soon enough, everything started to change. 'Cause there's no going back, no going back. There's no going back to your old life. Not living in the past, we're over that. I'm feeling it tonight, riding on the dizzying heights. Riding on the dizzying heights. Felt like nothing could stop us. Sunsets, remember the colors. They were wrong, it was way more than a dream. We climbed up, yeah, over the hillside. So right, we stood there all wide-eyed. You and I floated on air in my mind.
So now for the finishing touches, we're going to grab a black color pencil and we're just going to go through and loosely go over our line work. It's up to you as to how much detail you want to add. All you have to do is make sure that your paper is completely dry so that your pencil lines do show up. Sometimes I like to add different colors, like really light colors of pink or purple, maybe around the eyes, and that just gives a pop of color to your painting. Thanks everyone for joining me. I can't wait to see what you create. I hope you've learned a lot in this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.